everyone. So today we're going to be looking at this absolute monstrosity. So as you can see, it's one of my older pieces of work. Some very obvious anatomy errors right off the bat. I don't know what's going on with those wings. I'm not sure what happened when I drew those and thought that they looked alright. I remember being pretty happy with this when I drew it. And, there's nothing wrong with, drawing something and being happy with it. I'm just not sure how I thought that those looked alright. It's always interesting to go back and look at old artwork and just try and remember how I felt about it when I drew it. But anyway, I'm gonna just start with the head. I want to try and get a similar drawing, kind of make him look a little more kind of chunky and square. So we'll start with the head, just kind of make it similar. So I'm giving him kind of a square shape. I'm gonna put those kind of spiky fin things on his neck as well. Just gonna make him a little bigger and more kind of, I don't know, they look kind of more like scales or like plating in the original drawing, but I'm gonna make them look a bit more like fins in this one. So I'm thinking I'm gonna do him green, like the original. But we'll see, I don't know, it might be a different tone of green. I don't quite like the greens in the original, they're just, I don't know, they're too saturated. I don't prefer to work with as saturated colors. And I prefer greens generally on the blue end of the scale instead of the yellow. I really like aquamarine and those types of really deep sea green, so I might push the greens kind of more into the blue area, but we'll see. So I'm just gonna do a standard profile drawing. Just gonna rework the anatomy and not make it into a painting. I'll just do a simple profile so that we can focus on more on just the anatomy rather than like an interesting composition or a pose. And just focus on some more design elements of the actual creature. So I'm just gonna do a quick sketch here. It's obviously, I've sped this up, so it's gonna be a little longer than it does in the video. But a relatively quick sketch to kind of get the feel for where everything goes. It's always good to flip. I usually forget to flip things, especially when drawing humans. And then partway through the drawing I go, oh, I should flip that, and then I do, and it just looks horrendous. So it's always good to flip back and forth, because you get a new perspective on the drawing, and you might, there might be some issues. I typically remember to do it, because I, find something that might be easier to draw the other way around. And then I suddenly remember, oh, I maybe should have checked the drawing. But this one looks like it's alright. Animals are typically easier. I don't know why. Yeah, so here's the wings that I drew on the original. Now I'm just gonna draw a little thumbnail next to it so you can kind of see. Like, there should be 5 fingers, roughly. I mean, you don't have to, because dragons are imaginary. I'm sorry to break it to you, but dragons are imaginary. So you can theoretically, do whatever you want. But, 5 fingers, it makes sense. I usually do 4 long kind of arms, and then I'll do a short thumb that kind of curls around the top there, just like that. Yep. Usually do a thumb kind of there, and then I'll do 4 arms. And I try to curl them in a little bit. I don't usually draw fully fanned out wings, especially on just like a standing profile, just, partly because it fits better in the screen. But I'll usually do, kind of curled around like that. The way I've drawn wings over the years has really changed. This is a more recent, one of my more recent kind of styles. I really like it, but who knows, maybe we'll be back to this drawing in a year or two's time, and I might change my mind. It might look horrendous. But yeah, so I got it curling it around just to give it a more of a 3D kind of look. I mean, those other wings in the original drawing look really flat. So just kind of, spread out. If you look at your own hand and you let it relax, your hand kind of curls in on itself a little bit. And I've, obviously curled this a lot more than your own hand does. But I want to have, his wings are kind of coming out towards you a little bit. So they are, yeah. They are kind of reaching over a little bit. So I drew them separately on a separate layer so that I could fiddle with them a little bit without worrying about the drawing underneath. And then I could scale them a bit if I wanted to. And then just move them into the right location. So I typically the way I draw wings is I draw them like an arm. So you get that kind of shoulder muscle, and then a bicep and a tricep. And then, kind of looks a bit like a forearm there, and then all the hands come out of that little end bit there where your own hand would be if this were a human arm. And then I attach the shoulder kind of to the shoulder blade near where his front legs are. Yeah, so just checking the original, seeing what kind of details I want to keep. I think I am going to draw a few teeth sticking out. Just a few, though. I don't want too many. Yeah, that's good. So the anatomy is already a lot better on this guy. The other style is a lineless style. The way I used to do that would be I would make a sketch like this, and then I would make a thick line over top, and then I would fill in the shape underneath and kind of merge the line over top into the painting. I don't really do that so much anymore. The brush that I'm using here, I use it a lot. I've used it in, I think, all of my other drawings on this channel. It's called a colored pencil on Manga Studio 5, I believe it is. And it's just, I really like it because you can do shorter strokes that are a bit more natural, but the lines, they line up better, and they don't look quite as choppy as what if you would use a hard brush. I'm sure there are better ways, and that if I wanted to use a hard brush, I could, there's probably a better way to line things using that brush, but I prefer the soft brush, especially in a painting. If you're not looking to get rid of the lines at the end, they really blend well into the painting afterwards. You don't really have to play with them too much. Whereas hard lines can be a little bit harder to kind of work into the painting. At least for me anyway. These lines work well for my style. You probably have a way that you do it yourself. Which is good. There are loads of brushes, loads of tools. So I've just kind of moved his back leg forward a bit, rotated it so it's more grounded, so it's flat on the ground and lines up with the other one. I moved his tummy a little bit too. And then, yeah, so I'm just kind of sketching some scales over top. I really don't like drawing scales. I don't usually draw on all the scales just because I've always found it difficult to pick the right patterns, and it can be intensive too to draw lots of scales all over a whole creature, but I'm gonna do them this time. And make them a bit bigger too, so I don't have to draw quite so many. So right now what I'm doing is I'm doing a clean line art over top. Just because the one underneath, sometimes I'll, the sketch underneath is fine. I can, erase some of the more sketchy bits and clean it up from there, but I'm just going to do a fresh one over top. I'm not super worried about, making everything like 100% perfect, because when I paint over top of it, some of the detail is going to be lost. I'm not really that worried about it. So long as it's mostly the outer edge, I want to make sure that the outer edge is clean. There aren't any bits of, stray strokes outside of that, because I'm going to select it. I'm going to select it and fill it. So I want the outside lines to be fairly clean, but everything on the inside doesn't matter quite as much. It's just so long as it looks consistent throughout, that's the main thing. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go through this whole drawing and just add in all the detail there. So So now that I've finished up all the lines, I'm just gonna go through and make sure that everything's closed, that I don't have any open lines around the perimeter, because like I said, I'm gonna select it. I'm gonna select the shape and then fill it. And I don't want to fill anything inside the actual drawing. So yeah, I'm just gonna select all the way around the outside, invert the selection, and then fill the inside. I'm gonna use a kind of gray-green base. Yeah, like I said, I don't want it too saturated. And then I'm just using the opacity, no, I'm using the paint and apply brush, which is just a round brush with a soft edge. Just gonna paint in the major blocks of color here. I want his back to be darker. And then maybe his underside to be pale. Yeah, so I'm using this soft round brush because I don't prefer a hard brush. It can just look really, just really flat, I guess. Like when the colors blend into each other here, they just look nicer. Whereas a hard brush can be really, just look really kind of natural and too clean, I guess. And then sometimes with a hard brush, if the lines aren't, if you don't draw exactly within the right spaces, and a little bit, you put the dark a little bit over one line, you can really see it, and you really have to get it perfect. Whereas a soft brush is a little bit more forgiving. You can see the paler green and the darker green are kind of, fading into each other, and that's fine. I think it looks better that way. So I'm just putting a little bit of, I want the kind of wing membrane to be, the color to be paler than the rest of the dragon. But because it's semi-transparent, I want to put that paleness on, kind of the edge of the membrane, maybe a few other places, but not make it too saturated. Here, I'm just kind of making a little outline of his back there, because, you see a little bit of his back through the membrane. But what I'm doing with the whole painting is just, it's what's known as local color. You could say I'm an expert. But basically all you do is, or, the way I like to start is just paint the color that things are, with not worrying about shadow or light or anything, and just what color is it, and start with that. But this is what works for me. And it typically turns out quite well. Because when you try and paint the shadow in with the color, it can be hard to blend, because if you have an object that's multiple colors, it can be hard to make the shadow look consistent across that object. And how will the color of the shadow affect the color of the object underneath? And then you have to try and make it look nice. But if you paint the color that an object is, and you just worry about the colors, and then you paint the shadow over top, if you use the multiply, then the computer will take care of, if the shadow's kind of blue, the blue will mix with the colors underneath, and you don't have to try and get, you don't have to play with as many colors if you have a lot of colors interacting. I hope that makes at least a little bit of sense. But if you play around with it, that's what I did. Played around with it, watched some videos by other people who knew what they were doing. And you'll find something that makes sense to you. So yeah, I think we're almost done with local color here. I want to give him some markings. Not quite sure what I want to do. I kind of toyed with speckles and stripes, and I do a lot of stripes because I really like tigers. So my instinct is always to draw like tiger stripes. And I'm not sure. We'll see. Sometimes I play around and I find a pattern that I like. It kind of like this. It kind of is like a snake. Yeah. And I'm doing this on a separate layer too, so I can play with the blending modes. And the color as well. If I don't like the color, I can just select it and fill it. That's really handy. yeah, it's definitely what I found really helpful is just to add detail layer by layer. You know, color first. So I did local color first, well I did the lines first, but I did local color first, and now I'm doing markings. And then afterwards I'm gonna do shadow, and then light, and I'm just gonna take them one at a time and just layer them onto the drawing. That way everything looks more consistent. Like, yeah, the dragon is all one color, but even with the shadows changing those colors, you'll still be able to see underneath that, yeah, that spot is still one color. So I'm just gonna finish these markings up here, and then we can start with the fun part. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do a blue shadow. But of course, you know, if you do the shading on a different layer, you can always just lock the layer, fill it with a different color, see what you like. I mean, it depends on the environment that you're in. I obviously don't have any environment in the background. So, you know, really I don't really have to worry about matching it with what's going on in the picture behind. But I'm gonna do a blue, just because it's quite cool in a temperature sense, and cool in an awesome sense as well, I suppose. I'm just gonna imagine the light is coming straight down on top. So just right above him, middle of the picture. And it's just a matter of thinking about, okay, where is the light hitting? Where is it being blocked? What other parts are casting shadow? That's... I usually, when I do shadow, I usually start off with a really big brush and just do the big bits first. I'll usually kind of smooth it out a little bit, and then go in with a smaller brush and do more details. It doesn't look as much like a highlight as just, part of his kind of color. I guess it looks a bit more on his wings. But that splash of green I really like, so I'm just gonna do it. Yeah, normally I would go over a second time and do like a second pass of lighting and do, like the really small highlights and that, but I'm just gonna settle with this. Actually, it looks quite nice. I quite like that. It kind of looks, I don't know, that splash of green's really nice. I like that. He was starting to head towards blue, but that little bit of green is really good. And yeah, I think we are done. So yeah, there's a very clear difference between, the first one and the original one and the second one. It's always good to go back over your old drawings, especially ones that you thought were amazing when you did them. Because, there's nothing wrong with doing artwork and really enjoying it at the time. Like, I definitely remember looking at those wings and thinking, yeah, those look pretty cool. Yeah, thanks for watching, and good luck!